The reason I wanted to bring him onto the podcast was because I think that I always sit there and I'll complain about the way that financial services are, and you'll hear me go on. I've gone on like 20 different rants at this point about like there's a difference between a broker and a fiduciary, and like this is why financial services is so broken and such a terrible, like such a hated profession. But I think it's one of the best professions if you're actually doing the noble cause. And rather than me going through and having like another rant, I thought, hey, let's bring Patrick on. He's been there for 30 years. He was there at the beginning, like in the bullpen, stockbrokers back in like the early 80s or late 80s, early 90s. Like he was talking about like Wolf of Wall Street boiler room type of stuff. So when I met with him, I was like, bro, you got to come on and tell your story. Like,
yeah,
that way you were actually there. I can talk about it and be like, this is what I've seen, or this is what I know from experience from what people told me, but like you were actually there. So I thought it was kind of rewarding to hear his stories. It was fun for me.
Yeah, no, it's always fun to hear like the war stories firsthand. It's like I feel like I'm getting it third hand. Like I watched The Wolf of Wall Street, so I really don't know anything about this. But probably a little bit different though, a little bit different, a much more ethical guy, and a much very hardworking guy. We learned. If you didn't go listen to Monday's podcast, we're gonna recap it right now. But I highly recommend going and checking that out. Very interesting podcast, I might add. I love when Chris, you do the interviews with people that really, the average person couldn't really get in touch with for like that kind of an interview. So it's really nice to hear their ideas, hear their stories, hear how they got there and how they became who they were, their origin story. I love a great origin story, and Monday's podcast was, one of the greats as always. But did you have a favorite thing that really stuck with you from Monday's pod?
There was a few things that we talked about that I really, really, really liked. And I said we just kind of go through them step by step. The first thing that I wanted to really thank Patrick, and welcome to Friday Feedback. I think we just kind of broke right into this. So today we're going to be recapping Monday's episode, which you haven't heard. As soon as you're done with this, go ahead and check that out. We're going to be doing Viewer Mailbag, and then we'll end it off with Win of the Week. But on Monday's podcast, we had Patrick Wood, who is a stockbroker turned CEO over the 30 years in the financial service industry. So a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. And the biggest thing that I first took away from him was talking about a core value of hard work and discipline, and how everyone nowadays kind of thinks, oh, things are supposed to come easy. And the moment they hit that wall of like, oh, it's not feeling easy. And we talked about it on a few podcasts ago, our last podcast, like your brain just shuts off and it's like, all right, well, this isn't easy for us. I'm done and I'm not going to work. But I think if people are more true with their stories, true with the things they went through, like Patrick was, of like, hey, I didn't want to be a CEO. I didn't want these things. I just wanted to have fun. And I kept on getting pushed and pushed. And then I started seeing that I want to become better, not for just myself, but for other people. I want to advance and I want to keep on trying to right this ship. And sometimes it's hard because you have to get on that boat. You have to go on this journey and you start off into the sails and it's like, hey, this is really nice. Sea is calm. Then all of a sudden you get that first big wave and you look back at the shore and you're like, I probably shouldn't have left. But, the journey is by going through those waters, is by going through that jungle. That's how we grow, not by sitting back on the shore, not by sitting, at the resort. It's by going into the bush and finding ourselves and finding where we suck at and getting better at it with people.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that he said that I wrote down in my notes here that I thought was so interesting is, looking at what your best skills are and really focusing on that and honing that and using that to your advantage, right? It makes so much sense, right? If you hate chemistry and you go and try and be a chemist, you're not going to be the best chemist in the world. The best ones in the world are the ones who are obsessed with chemistry, right? It's something that draws to them, right? And I thought that was interesting because, I don't know, I feel like depending on who you're listening to, sometimes people say, double down on your strengths. Some other people will say, double down on your weaknesses, right? And I think you can do both. I think there's a lot of time in the day and a lot of life left to be lived. And I think it's interesting to hear someone who, kind of rose from where he started all the way up to CEO. And, he didn't want to be CEO, but there he was, he had to do it. So I think it's interesting. And like you said, he wanted to be better, not just for himself, but for everyone else, right? I think it's one thing to be better for your family. I mean, not really usually you're not going to try and be better for your friends. That doesn't really make sense to me, but I thought that was really noble of him. it kind of made it more grandeur. I want to be better, not just for myself, not because of my ego, because I believe I am greater than what I am. It's like, no, I want to be better because the people around me deserve an even better version of myself. And I thought that was really beautiful.
Are you saying that you wouldn't try to become a better friend because they deserve it?
No, I'm saying I would try and no, that's not what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is more like it never crossed my mind to be better for my friends because
Mm.
I'm already trying to be better. So it's like they're not my why. You know, it's like they're the side dish of the meal, right? If this is a meal, my why is like my ham and turkey, right? My family, my loved ones, maybe my wife, my kids, like that is my why. Like, I'm gonna be better for them, right? So that's a lot stronger of a why. Now, if I'm gonna be better for my friends, I could use that as a why, but it's just not gonna tap into that. It's not gonna tap in as much. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not as strong of a why. So to me,
Yeah.
it just never crossed my mind.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And, kind of go back to what you said earlier about how there's so many gurus out there that say, like, it's either you double down on your strengths or you go hard into your weaknesses. And
Mhm.
just like this, both things are true.
Yeah.
You can go hard into your strengths and work on your weaknesses. And you can do things for your families, for your own self-preservation, for your own growth, and do it for your friends. Obviously, there's a stronger reason, there's a stronger why. But I think the more stuff we can get behind us, the more wind we can get at our sails, the farther we're going to go. It'd be silly to be like, hey, the wind's blowing this way and we can put up these sails and we'll go pretty fast. And we have all these other sails over here, but we're not going to use those ones. Like, I don't want those sails. Like, why would I think about my friends or like getting better for the world or trying to be a better person for my neighbor? Like, that could help me get to where I want to go faster, but like, I don't want to use those sails. Like, I don't want to go that fast. Like,
Mhm.
why not? Why not go faster? Who knows how far we have to go in this journey? So just keep on going as best you can, as fast as you can, and like break stuff and keep on trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's what's so interesting about this journey is, you never know how far you can go. Because even when you go as far as you think you can go, it's usually even more that you can go. And sometimes when you start climbing the mountain, you're just beginning. And you feel like you're at the top. You only then look up and see that you're barely at the basin of the mountain. And there's just so much more to climb.
Yeah. I remember one time, my wife and my old roommate at the time, and we took our dog. We went on this hike in Sedona
Hmm.
or Flagstaff. We were like, oh, this is gonna be an easy hike. I think it's called Bear Mountain, and it
Hmm.
was hot, but we're like, we didn't look it up. We were dumb. So you walk onto this hike and you start just climbing, and we have the dog with us, and the dog starts to overheat. So I'm carrying the dog at this point, and we're like, we're almost there. Every time we get to the peak, we realize like that wasn't the peak. The peak was like way over there. And then we do it again. You get to the top of the peak, and you're like, oh my God, that wasn't it again. And hours and hours and hours later, we finally made it, and then we were able to get back to the car and get away. But it wasn't through we went through that journey that we're like, wow, look how far we could have pushed ourselves. Look how far we went
Hmm.
because we didn't know how far the journey was. I remember when I was in Hawaii, one of the biggest hikes that people like to do in Oahu that's now illegal to do because they're tearing down the stairs. It's called Stairway to Heaven, and
Hmm.
it's this old stairway that was used by the military back during World War II to make sure that the Japanese weren't invading. So it was on the top, one of the tallest peaks on Oahu, and it looks out. And at the top of this peak, there are two little bases, two little bunkers that people would sit in. And over the years, it's been 50 years or so, 60 years, 80 years since those were in use. Those stairs have become very rotten. They've fallen. There's been landslides. So there are parts of that hike that are extremely dangerous where you're basically climbing a ladder up the side of a mountain and the ladder isn't going just up and down. It's like inverted. So if you fall,
Oh,
like you're dead. Um,
yeah.
but on that hike, it's very much the same of like, oh, like there's the top. We're almost there. And you get there and you're like, oh, damn it, that wasn't the top. You just keep on going and going and going until you're there. And when you finally get to the top, you realize that, yes, this was beautiful and I like being up here. But what I really enjoyed was the journey of getting here.
Mm.
And now I get to do it, get to enjoy it all the way back down. And
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that the journey ends. That was just one part of it. We
Hmm.
thought that that was the full story. And that was just a chapter.
So in that case, kind of the journey was half of the excitement and the other half of the excitement was at the top? Or do
Yeah.
you think it okay. Yeah.
I think it's, to go back to what we talked about last week, I think there's a danger of that boring middle. Our desires, our excitement, they come really strong at the beginning of starting something and really strong at the end of starting something. But it's that boring middle that daily habits, the stuff that you're doing every day that's getting you from where you started to where you want to be, that's so pernicious and so difficult to get through, and especially in this path to financial independence. People will hear about financial independence for the first time, listen to a podcast, read a blog, whatever it is. And now they're like, oh man, I'm in on this. I'm telling my wife we're saving 50% of our income. We're going to start investing in this. It's going to be great. And like your spouse is like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? And that's what happened to me too.
Yeah.
And you go really hard into it because you're so excited. And then, 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later, 4, 5, 6 years later, because this journey is slow to get to financial independence. It's long. And during that boring middle, that's where people often say like, it's not happening. Like I can see my net worth growing. I can see all these things growing. And I'm just not going to get there. You need to remind yourself with metrics of like, this is how far I've come.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can see the peak.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know if that peak is the actual peak, but you can see that like I'm going towards somewhere. And look at how far I've come. Look at that last peak that I thought was it, and it wasn't. But look how much more there is. I'm almost there, I think.
And I think it's almost like a dog chasing a bone. You can never, if you guys do have dogs at home, I don't know about your dog, but my dog never gets full. That thing could eat and eat and eat and it could never stop eating. And I think that's part of the way you have to look at it when you're chasing a goal. You can never feel like you arrived. You can never feel like, oh, I'm full now. I've made it. And that's such a scary thing and such a beautiful thing at the same time, because the journey has no end and the journey has no end. And depending on how you perceived what I just said, that can either be scary or the most beautiful thing ever. I think it's so nice to see someone who's older, not 30, not 40, not, I'm talking someone you consider like an elder statesman, right? Be on the same level, be on the same growth path. And I think that's what's so beautiful about this interview with Patrick. He's a grinder. He's a grinder. He's always been a grinder since his parents instilled it in him, and that hard work ethic. And I think that's something that we all should be blessed with, because it's a lot more painful to learn it as an adult than it is as a kid. So big shout out to my parents for making me work hard. But
I think that, and Patrick talks about instilling that in his kids, instilling that hard work. And I think it's so difficult in this time where everyone wants to go on social media for their 5 minutes of fame to say like, hey, I did it. And it was so easy. And if you can't do it, then you must be dumb. And, does it happen 1% of the time? Sure. It happens 1% of the time. But for the average person, it doesn't. Like the path of entrepreneurship. And, one of the quotes I really liked from Patrick was that as a business owner, you have a moral obligation to take risk.
Yeah.
And that means that you are going to be, when you're taking risk, that means you're taking uncertainty. You're moving into the realm of the unknown. And that means that you're going to fail often. And that's okay. I mean, I kind of equate it to the same way that Elon Musk equates running a business. It's like waking up, eating glass, and getting punched in the groin all day long. And I'm going through that currently with my company. You have ups, you have downs, and there's days where you're like, man, I'm on top of the world. Not even days. There's like minutes where you're like, I'm on top of the world. And then 5 minutes later, you are on the bottom rung. Because when you own a company and you have employees, especially, like everything is getting filtered up. If they can't deal with it, they filter it up. They can't deal with it, they filter it up. So you, as the CEO, as the owner of a business, you're dealing with the worst stuff, stuff that no one can figure out. And also that you're taking on the most risk. The employees, they're like, oh no, I might lose my job, but like you might lose your livelihood. You might lose everything you've put into this. And you have to be, as a business owner, so certain. You have to be able to tell other people, like, I know the path ahead. We're going to go together. They need, your employees, your people need that certainty that you believe you see. But you in the back of your mind are like, I really don't know. Like, don't tell anybody, please. Like, be quiet about it. But I'm unsure. And it's so hard to balance that dichotomy of being so sure in the front of everyone else and also being like, I hope I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. It is not for the faint of heart. It is, I heard something from a business owner that I really respect. And, being in business is stressful. And if you can't deal with stress, you really shouldn't. It's okay to be an employee. Like there's nothing. Every business needs employees, right? But when the market is good, it's stressful. When the market is bad, it's stressful. When the market is sideways, it's stressful. It's always going to be stressful. And it's how you deal with that stress that is the difference between whether or not you're going to survive in business or not. And I would say how you deal with stress is the mark of a great man as well.
How do you feel you deal with stress as a fellow entrepreneur? And then I could talk about myself.
You know, when stress comes up, truthfully, I just want to like bury my head in the sand, run and hide, delegate. But that's just the instant reaction, right? The next, I guess, video that plays in my mind is, damn, there's not a person I can go to with this problem that can solve it. I'm the only one who can solve this. So I have to solve it. I'm gonna solve it. And what I know is running away from the storm makes it so you're in the storm longer. But if you run through the storm, you'll get through it quicker. So might as well attack it, and attack.
I found for myself, and you mentioned it earlier, that maybe if you're someone who doesn't deal well with stress, entrepreneurship isn't for you. I remember hearing that a lot. And I always said, okay, then so entrepreneurship is not for me. That was one of those limiting beliefs that held me back because I listened to other people that said that. And I was like, okay, then I can't do it. Because our listeners have listened to, me well enough that like I struggle with anxiety. I struggle with stress. Like one of my big dials of life is simplicity. Simplicity because I don't deal well with stress. Yet I'm an entrepreneur who owns a couple of different business streams that I'm in charge of all of them.
Yeah.
So how do you bridge that gap? And what I've kind of come to the conclusion of is like my anxiety is my superpower, because where other people might be like, oh, this is all going to work out, it's going to be fine. My anxiety is constantly like, no, it's not going to be fine, bro. You need to like think 20 steps ahead. You need to constantly be figuring it out. And that is both a gift and a curse, in that I'm constantly like putting myself into not great situations. And it's allowing me to build this business and be even better than most people because I'm looking out. I mean, like last night, for example, we ran into an issue with the business that happened at like 7 p.m. that I found out about it. And then, there was nothing I could do about it, I believe. So I was like, I'm going to try to get rid of it. I'm just going to try to put it away and watch some TV. And then I'm going to go to bed and I'll deal with it the next day. And, I was finally able to get to bed around like 9 o'clock. And, everyone kind of talk about it. You wake up at 1 a.m. and your brain's just going. You're just going so hard. And that's where I was. I was just in it. And I was like, oh, man. And the reason that happens, just so from like a neurochemical standpoint, when you wake up from that little sleeping thing, your frontal lobe, that executor, is not turned on. It takes longer for that to wake up unless you get a full rest cycle. So when you're going through that 2 a.m., 3 a.m., like everything seems like it's so important right now, and then you get back to sleep and you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh, I guess it wasn't as big a deal. It's because the back of your brain, your hindbrain, is freaking out because it perceives an imminent threat because it doesn't know that you're not safe. And that's what my body was doing. That's what my brain was doing. It was like, you're not safe. We need to fix this right now. And, so that means that I got out of bed at 1:30 a.m. because I wasn't just going to keep on sitting there in bed trying to force myself to sleep. So I woke up and I was up for 3 hours here at my computer working at stuff from 1:30 to like 4:30 a.m. Then I went back to sleep from 4:30 to like 5 or 6, 6 or 6:30 before actually waking up. And like, that's the path of an entrepreneur. It is not sunshine and rainbows. It is that. It is waking up. It is fear. It is concern. It is not being able to sleep at night. And it is freedom. It is all the things that you want and more. It is growth. It's all those things. So I think we need to focus on both sides of the ledgers before people who go down this path or don't go down this path because of pre-existing beliefs. I want to really demystify everything and just tell the God's honest truth. Yeah, that's the best thing I think we can do.
I think that's brilliant. I think it's interesting how you structured that in your mind. In a way, it's like, this is what I've been told. This is who I know I am. And here's how I can flip a negative into a positive. I like that. It's funny too, because I know you're a glass half empty type guy. So to have that shift to glass half full, it's like, oh no, I'm going to turn this against itself. It's just like, it's so interesting.
It's like a
Especially,
jujitsu move.
it's like a jujitsu move. Yeah, like, it definitely is. Definitely is. But it's like, it's not a small, it's like, you didn't do that like a little judo move for breakfast. Like, no, this is for the path you took for your life, which I think is so interesting. So it's like uh, on the outside, you're glass half empty, but on the inside, you might be like a closeted glass half full type guy. So I'm like, this is kind of, I'm curious to see and hear more about just you as a person and how that continues to go on. Because I know, like you said, simplicity is key for you and business is tumultuous. But I think that's what makes a better business. Someone who is willing to wake up early in the middle of the night and work on it, because he knows it needs to get done. And it's commendable. It's commendable.
Before we move on to our viewer mailbag, I do want to bring up one last point that Patrick talked about that I thought was
Yeah.
really important and very insightful and good to have another person say. And that was that financial independence is not about making more. Sometimes it's about spending less. It's about being okay with what is enough and knowing what is enough for you, because there are many people in this world that are rich, but there are very few people that are wealthy. I don't just mean wealthy in terms of money, but wealthy in terms of time, in terms of discipline, in terms of being there with their family, all of these things, and being able to find that concept for you of what is enough is something that I've been really struggling with and working with for a long time. I think that too often in life do we go through wanting to be happy, as if happy is this state that we can attain and get there and be like, good. Just like, oh yeah, I can eat enough and I'll be hungry forever. Or I'll be full forever. I can get the perfect workout and be good forever. And I don't think happiness is like that. I think that instead of us trying to pursue happiness, we should try to pursue contentness. And contentness would be enoughness. That when you are content, there are still going to be days that are bad. There are still going to be days that are good. But at least you know that you're enough, that you have enough. So maybe we need to switch our pursuit in our brains. Just a thought.
Just a thought. I wonder, because I know happiness is the opposite of sadness, and it's depending on the mental framework that has been installed. Sadness can be easier to get to, or happiness can be easier to get to, but they can both disappear in a fleeting moment. I mean, it's as easy as one text message. I'm leaving. We're done. You just won the lottery. Business is up 30%, right? Your happiness can go up, it can go down, and it's so fragile. I understand the idea of like not chasing happiness. Even in the Bible, it doesn't talk too much about happiness, right? It talks about purpose. But it's like, it's such a weird emotion, happiness and sadness, because it dictates so much of our life.
And so much of it's outside of our control, that happiness and that sadness. It's all based off the causes, the conditions that cause it. But that's why I'm kind of thinking maybe I should shift my life maybe we should all think about shifting our life from happiness to contentness, because contentness, enoughness, doesn't matter what happens. Oh, hey, you just got a phone call, grandma died. It's okay. I'm enough. This is enough. I had enough time with her. I wish I had more, but it was enough. Or the great thing happened. Hey, great job. Good news. You got a promotion. You won the lottery. Here's $100,000, whatever it is. That's wonderful. I already had enough, but this is great to have more.
Yeah.
But I didn't need it. So maybe that enoughness can be something we can all strive for, because happiness, sadness, all those things are going to be in there. But if you have that enough, that content, then you have that. I would think that the opposite of content would be desire. Always wanting more, that, because you said, like, what's the opposite of happiness? It's sadness. The opposite of contentment would be desire. So maybe we need to try to rein in our desire. It's not that, being poor isn't about having less. It's about wanting more. And that wanting more is within us.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think, I mean, I don't want to get too political, but definitely America has become very consumerism. And I feel like it's always been that way. It's only become more of a problem. But yeah, I think to be content is to be happy. But I don't know.
Well,
Just
let's
pros and
reflect
cons.
on this more. We can bring it up again. I mean, we're
Yeah.
not going to come to an answer. This is a philosophical question that has plagued humanity since the dawn of time. We're
Yeah.
not going to fix it on
Yeah.
a financial podcast in an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think sometimes you just have to pose the question, and posing the question is it, because in truth, no one knows what the real answer is. The more that we explore the human mind, the more we explore physics, the more we explore everything, we realize that we actually don't know anything. We always thought like, oh, we know what gravity is at least. Oh, well, actually we don't. Like it's the strong force, but it's the weakest force. I don't understand how that works. I know how macro physics works, but then when you go to micro, it no longer works. I know how your brain works, but I don't understand what consciousness actually is. I can see all the synapses, and we can only perceive what we can perceive. And our eyes can only perceive 0.3% of the visible light spectrum. So 99% of what is actually out there, of what is true, we can't see. We can only touch and feel in our limited sense. An octopus, for example, can touch color, and they can change their whole body chemistry based off of a touch. And they can touch color, and they can touch their ability to morph their entire body. I don't know what that even could be like. Our brains can't even perceive of that. From a quantum physics perspective, is the math holds up to there are 13 different dimensions, and there's nothing to show that that there is an infinite number of dimensions. We know that there's only 3 dimensions. There's forward, back, left, right, up, down. We all are in 3-dimensional space. Then we thought that we're like, okay, well, there's actually a 4th dimension in standard physics, and that's time. Hey, Dominic, I need you to meet me here at this location, this latitude, this longitude, this level at this time, 4th dimension. But then we realized that that wasn't right when you got to quantum physics. Time didn't mean anything. Time is the constant in all things. So somewhere out there, there is a 4th dimension, a 5th dimension, something that is outside of up, down, left, right, forward, back. I can't perceive of it. No one can. But to think that there is something out there that is a 4th, a 5th, a 6th, a 7th, I can't even perceive of one. And we know that the math holds up for there to be at least 10 more. We don't know jack.
Yeah.
For anyone to say that they do is crazy.
You got a lot of learning to go.
The hole is deep, and it keeps getting deeper.
We'll save that for next podcast. Now we're going to move on to another section of today's episode called Viewer Mailbag. So welcome back to 5 Friday Feedback, Viewer Mailbag. This is where we read a letter from the community. Maybe if you'd like, you could submit a letter to us on our website, the5guys.com. But today's letter: how bad off am I for retirement? Howdy, 5 Guys. First off, I love the podcast. Appreciate that. You both managed to make personal finance sound approachable, and I've even laughed out loud a few times in your analogies about the money void. So here I am, humbly submitting my story in hopes that you can shed some light on my mess, or at least convince me that I'm not as bad as I think I am.
Let's see.
Here's the deal. I am a 45-year-old human. I was expecting it was going to be man or woman, so just as 45-year-old. I don't know. It could be turtle. I don't know. Here's the deal. I am 45 years old. I've been terrible with money for most of my life. Live for the moment type of person. Was unintentional mantra for... No, gotcha. So live for the moment was my unintentional mantra for way too long. And now it feels like the bill is coming due. I'm waking up to the fact that I need to get my act together, but honestly, I'm a little bit terrified that it's just too late. Here's where I'm at though. My annual income is $95,000, solid but nothing crazy. My IRA is $14,000. I did max out my IRA for 2024, which felt like a win. Congratulations.
It is a win. Congrats.
That is definitely a win. 401k, $42,000, but I was about $8,000 to $10,000 short of maxing it out this year. Okay. Savings, $60,000. Cool. Sitting in a high yield savings account, double cool. Like a security blanket, I'm scared to touch. Understandable. Very understandable. Expenses. My rent is currently $1,500 a month. I've got no debts, congratulations, which I'm very proud of, but also because I've been a little bit too afraid to take action on anything big like a mortgage. The dream of ever owning a home feels like that. Just a dream. every time I look at the housing market, I think, why bother? Even with my savings, the numbers really don't seem to work. And I feel like I missed my window.
Let's go ahead and stop here.
Okay.
So before we move on,
Mhm.
something I'm hearing is that like it sounds almost like our audience member or our writer has given up at 45.
Mhm.
And to steal that old Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yep.
And I'm worried that right now he's like, I can't do it, so I might as well not try. The housing market's messed up. I only make $95,000. I'm 45 years old. It's too late. Dude, you're 45 years old.
You're young.
Like,
That's young.
you have time. You
Yeah.
have so much time. But if you believe that you don't, then yeah, you're probably gonna create that reality. So I'm trying to think of a joke or something that we could like say to like get you out of this like funk. Like,
I
dude, you're
gotcha.
45 years old.
Yeah. So let's discount this, right? The first 18 years of your life, you were just learning, right? That's school. You didn't really even exist, right? So let's say you were born at 20. You've been only playing this game for 25 years, right? And you're only 45. Say you live to 85, you got another 45 years, another 40 years, right? So there's no point living a life where you're afraid of the future and you don't act in the now. You're sitting good. First, I feel like you're sitting good, right? Compared to some of the other viewer mailbags,
Oh my God, yeah.
you're sitting good. Like, you are sitting good, very good. You're not $100,000 in debt, $200,000 in debt. I saw a video today. These people, they were rioting at the Capitol, right? Not a January 6th moment, totally different. They were talking about debt relief for their college, right? Some people were shouting that they're $200,000 in debt, $300,000 in debt, $400,000, $500,000 in debt. Crazy, crazy numbers, right? You're sitting above them, not as a person, as a human being, but from a financial standpoint, right? Now, say me, Dom, howdy. I go to school. I go to school. I rack up $200,000 in debt, right? I'm in the hole 200,000. So I have to dig myself out of the hole. You're $200,000 ahead of me. Plus, you have more savings than me. Plus, you have a higher income than me, right? So you're sitting good. You're sitting good. You're taking action. You're reaching out to the podcast. You're listening. You're trying to become more financially literate. I think you're taking all the right steps. We just got to take a few more steps to get you on a path where you don't feel so lost.
I feel like he's like, oh my God, the book's about to end, man. Like, I'm 45, book's almost over. Like, we better knock this out. Like,
Yeah.
we need to have like that crazy grand slam moment where the wars happen and everyone wins and then we're good. Like, that's what I need. It's like, bro, you just started the journey. Like, you're still back in the Shire, dude. Like, you got time. Like, he's 45 years old and he's acting as if like, oh, I'm supposed to retire at 65 and I'm 64. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, you have so much time. And additionally, like, how freaking lucky are you that you realized it at 45? You know how many people in America, the average amount of money that somebody has for retirement at this time, not the average, I'm sorry, the mean, no, the median number. Because when you do the mean, it gets, there are some people that skew the hell out of it. You can only go to zero. You can go to infinitely high. When you get the median though, the average person that retires with $300,000 to go into retirement, you're going to leave your job with $300,000 in life. Yes, you have Social Security. Yes, they have some more things. You're comparing yourself to maybe myself, maybe to Dominic, maybe to people that you see on social media who you don't know if they're telling the truth or not. It's good to aspire to somebody else, aspire to someone else's level, but rather than doing that, how about we try to be better than we were yesterday? Because there's always somebody out there that's better than you. I don't care how high you go, there's somebody else that's better than you. How good you are, there's somebody else out there who's going to outtrain you, outbetter you. Somebody's going to come around with genetics, with better knowledge, better everything. Things are always getting better.
Mm-hmm.
We learn from each other. It's kind of like the 4-minute mile, right? For so long, everyone's like, 4-minute mile, impossible. No one can do it. Then somebody actually did it. And then like 2 weeks later, 36 people did it because it became possible to do. If you go back, you watch the Olympics for like the skiing of like the original, like to do the jump was like a freaking 10-foot gap. And the first one that won was a spread eagle, like where they just do like this. Like the thing that you teach a child to do on their first jump used to win the Olympics. You're 45. You have so much time to grow and to become a world champion or whatever the hell you want.
Yeah. People oftentimes underestimate what they can do in 5 years, and they overestimate what they can do in a year. Or is it the other way around? It might be the other way around.
No, you got it right. So people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unbelievable. I mean, if you like, I don't know, like you could go to the gym for 6 months and you would look like a completely different person, right? It doesn't take 10 years, and it doesn't take 10 years to really get back to where you need to be. He's sitting good. He's sitting good. So I'm going to continue on unless you have any final thoughts for that.
No, I just wanted to like let him know, like, bro, you sound like you're dying.
Yeah.
unless he's gonna about to like tell us like I have a terminal illness, like
got 6 months left.
Yeah.
So my bigger fear is retirement. I can't stop thinking about it. I'm going to be working till I drop. Is the thought process that I've currently adopted. Or worse, I will end up retiring only to eat ramen every night in a tiny little apartment that I can barely afford. I'm desperate to figure out how to avoid that future. But everywhere I turn, I feel a little bit overwhelmed. I've been trying to teach myself about savings, investing, and all that fun stuff, but it's like drinking from a fire hose. Interesting. I've never tried that. I'm probably going to skip that one. You'd have to write back in, tell me how that goes. Every financial guru has a different opinion. And I'm constantly asking myself, should I dump more into investments or pray for compounding miracles? How do I stockpile savings because it feels safe? Or how do I even begin to prioritize anything at this stage of the game? I'm scared of making the wrong move, but nothing is worse than staying the same. Honestly, I feel like the poster child of what not to do with my money, and it sucks. So here's my ask. Do you think I'm completely screwed, or is there hope for me yet? If you were in my shoes, what would be your first steps to right the ship? And maybe, just maybe, can you help me laugh about this so I stop feeling like a total failure? You're not a total failure. You are not a total failure. Not at all. Not by anybody's definition. Thanks for reading my mini financial crisis, and keep doing what you do. Your podcast give people hope like me. Your podcast gives hope to people like me. There we go. And a reason to believe we can turn things around. One awkward dollar at a time. From no debt, no home, no clear plan in play. Help me make sense of my financial dismay. How about that?
Boy, before we get into the financial stuff, I want to talk about the importance of realizing that you're telling yourself a story all the time. And right now, this guy is in a freaking slasher film. And like, it seems like, oh my God, like it's right around the corner. Retirement, it's like it's Jason right behind the door. He's ready to go. And like, bro, you're 45. Like traditional retirement age is 65, but like even that is a suggestion. It's not required. There's not a place there might be companies, but the companies are not supposed to let you get to like 66 and be like, all right, time to go outside. We have the shotgun, like kneel down. That's not the way things work. And I feel like in your brain, you're thinking like, I'm about to die. Like retirement is right there. And if I don't reach it, I don't know, the retirement police are going to come and I'm gone.
And beat me silly. Yeah. Yeah. Like that's not what's going to happen. This isn't North Korea. So that's good. That's kind of a bonus.
How lucky are you that you don't live in North Korea, first off? So like, you got it.
Common American W right there. We love that. So a lot of his problems are going to come from the mind, right? Most of life's problems come from the mind. Is there anything else you want to talk about in regards to that? Because it seems like there's a lot of mental hiccups there that need to be solved and resolved. And maybe his source of information, I know he's listening to the podcast, right? But maybe his other source of information are really steering him in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's really possible. Like you are the guy aggregate of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And maybe he's not physically spending time with these people, but like if you're listening, you're consuming that data. Again, no one knows what is true. Everyone's just giving their suggestions as to what worked for them. But they're saying that it has to be true because it worked for me and I know my brain and I know how good I am. And if you say that I did something that wasn't right or that you wouldn't do, that means you're saying that I'm wrong. And that can't be true because I'm perfect. That's the thought process that happens instantaneously. So that's why they react in anger when they see something else. This guy his story, it's all just in his mind. all this discontent, this fear, this trepidations in the mind. And it's so funny that we will go through our entire life working on, our brain is working on 100% of things. 90% of the things, though, we can't do anything about. 5% we might be able to control, maybe. Maybe we can do something, maybe we can get ahead of it. The other 5% we actually can do things about. So 95% of our headspace, of our mental trash, of this guy's, what's going on in his head, is being worked on of what happens if I do fail or don't fail, things that are within your control, but also you're putting things that are way without of your control, and you're ignoring the 5% that you actually have control over by making this crazy story of retirement's coming for me as if it's a slasher film. And it's not. Yeah. Like, even if you don't retire, you're going to be okay. I think people think that, especially when you get to retirement, like you start to go into this self-preservation mode. This guy's in this self-preservation mode like 20, 30 years early. But, you know, I think that people fear, like, once I get into retirement, this is how much money I have. And if I run out of the money, I die. Like, it's just like, I run out of money, like the clock hit zero, done. Yeah. But in the reality of how things actually work, from someone who works with retirement people, you don't just die, you adapt. You adapt to your new normal. And yeah, that might suck. It might mean having to go work at Walmart. It might mean having to get a second job, having to volunteer, having to go to Meals on Wheels, having to do something, having to move in with your kids. All of those things are terrible. Yeah, are not terrible, but they're not ideal.
Yeah.
But you're still alive. Your journey continues. Your story still gets to be written. It's not over when the bank account hits zero. And not to mention, you're at 45, you're not in debt, you're in a great situation. You just think you're not.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I don't know who you're talking to or who you're telling. What guru is telling you that you're a failure, but you're freaking not.
Like, you could be $500,000 in debt. How would you feel then? Right? Things can always get worse, but things are pretty good right now. So where do they start?
Need to work. I think we need to work on this contentment. Like, I think he's trying to like seek like happiness. Like, oh, if I can retire, I'll be happy. And like, that's not true. Even if you retire, you're not going to be happy. You need to seek enoughness. Like, how am I there? So you have $60,000 in a high yield savings account. You're doing freaking good. You have a crazy emergency fund. I have no idea how much your expenses are. I know you make $95,000. I don't really know all that stuff, but you have $60,000 in a retirement account or in a savings account. You have $42,000 in a 401k. You have $14,000 in an IRA, and you have basically $1,500 or maybe $2,000 a month in expenses. You have a net worth of $100,000 at 45. You know what the average is? 50. You're double the average person. Yeah, if you take the median, not the mean, and then that's 45 to 55 is like 50 to 70 something. The average millennial, 25 to like 35, I think is 30 something, 30, 31 or 32. So whoever because remember, financial news stations are always talking about the average, and they take the mean, and the mean is you add up everything, and then you divide by how many you added up. Yeah. And when you have that, you can only go to zero. No one's starting with negative numbers, but you can go to infinite amounts. But when you take the median, the number that's in the middle, that's when you're able to actually find the truth. You add up all the numbers, so there's maybe 16 zeros over here. There's a couple of infinites over there. Not even infinites, but like really high numbers. Yeah. And you find what's the middle number. You could also do the mode maybe and like try to say like, hey, what number shows out the most? Yeah. But when you do that, the averages change. And we all base of who we are, how are we doing based off of the averages of everyone else. I'm not saying that's the right way to do things. I'm not saying that's the wrong way. It's the way that we do it. We go with the herd, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But
that is so interesting.
You have so much money. Like, you're so good and you're so afraid. Yeah. And I think that you might be able to use this as your superpower to get to 5 faster because you do have this fear. So let's take this, use some mental jujitsu with yourself and be like, bro, I'm struggling. I need to get there faster. And you'll get there faster. But you also need to work as you're doing that to make sure that when you get there, that you're going to feel like you have enough. Because the biggest fear that you have is that you go through what I had. And that you think like, oh, once I hit this number, I'm going to feel like heavens are going to part. I'm going to finally be happy. And I got there. And you realize it's another day, just you have a different bank account number. Yeah. And nothing changes. And then you realize, or you think that, oh, you know what it is? It's that I had the wrong number. I needed an additional $200,000. And you pursue that. You get it. You're like, oh, damn it. Feeling hasn't changed. It must be another $200,000. Must be another $1 million. Must be whatever number you think it is. It has nothing to do with any of that. Personal finance is so much more personal than it is finance. But let's get back to your actual question. The question that you really came here for. What can I start to do now? $60,000 in an emergency fund? That's a really big emergency fund. I'm going to ask, is that adequately serving you right now?
Mm-hmm.
Could it be maybe better reallocated to some investments? You know, we here at the Fi Guys we don't really give rules as best we can. I really try to make people find internally what is best for them, what makes you sleep well at night.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put a gun to my head and said, Chris, how much should an emergency fund be? I'm going to say 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And then if you say like, I'm going to shoot, I'll say, okay, fine, 6 months.
Like, that's funny. Yeah. Yeah.
But
I agree.
But for me, it's a year.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
Like if you put a gun in my head and say you're going to shoot me, I'm going to say 6 months, but I don't do that for myself. So what kind of a guru am I? I'm not. I'm just a dude who's trying to like teach you.
Yeah.
Stuff that I struggle with.
There's so many factors that go into it. What are your expenses? How quick do you believe you can get reemployed? Right? How many people are counting on you? You have outstanding debts. Like, what are we talking about here? And you say for someone like, hey, you need to save up a year of expenses, they're going to laugh in your face. Like, I can't even, I have to go to the grocery store tomorrow, right? Like, I have gas, like I have bills, like, and you want me to not only pay for the bills for this month, but for next month and the month after that and the month after and 12 more months. It's like, it's hard to wrap your head around sometimes when you're in the thick of it. But 3 to 6 months is more doable. Let's start with 3 months,
I mean, shit, if you're really in the bad spot, start with a week, start with a day, start with anything. What we need to do is get your head out of the muck. When you're in it, when you're in that fight or flight mentality, you can't see anything else. You're driving in the fog. You can't even see your headlights. You need to get that bird's eye view. You need to get that helicopter view. Get yourself detached and see, okay, there I am. That's where I need to go.
Yep.
But right now, you're not even in the situation, dude. But you think you're in the situation that I can't see in my headlights. But in reality, like you're looking miles in the future. Like you're good. You have the clear road. You're fine. But instead of that, it's like you took a fire extinguisher before you went on your drive, and you sprayed the front of your car. The full front window sprayed. You got inside the car, and you're like, all right, let's drive. I'm not gonna use the windshield wipers. I'm just gonna see what happens. And that's not the reality you're in. Turn on the windshield wipers. Swing through a car wash. Don't freaking spray your car. Don't just clean your windshield. You're fine.
Yeah.
You're doing the right things currently. You said that you maxed out your IRA last year. Amazing. Keep doing that. You said that you put in, I don't know how much, $20,000 or something into your 401k.
Something
oh no,
like that.
You said that you were $8,000 or $10,000 short. So that means you put in like $12,000 into your 401k, and you think you're a failure for that. You saved $15,000 out of a $95,000 income, and I'm going to guess that's before taxes, meaning that your savings rate's like 20%.
Pretty good.
And you think you're a failure compared to who? You are doing everything right. If I had to start somewhere, I would go ahead and start saying, how much money are you spending? I need to know that for sure. How much money are you making? Sounds like you know that. From there, we need to just figure out how much can I throw at the gap? How much money I make minus how much money I spend, I can throw at investments. And you have a superpower in that you have a buttload of anxiety that tells you that I need a lot of money. So keep on working on that gap, and you'll be able to get to financial independence sooner. And that is not going to fix the problem. The problem is not the money. The problem is you. The problem is your mindset. The problem is that you feel that it is not enough. And no matter what you get, I can tell just by what you wrote that it's never going to be enough. I would suggest therapy. I think you need it. Even the home ownership thing of like, oh, well, I can't do it right now, so I guess I give up.
Yeah.
That's not the way to go through life. It's going to be, you're playing the game on super hard mode. And no one gets extra bonus points in life. You don't get a higher chair in heaven because you played the game on extremely hard. No one is handing out awards at the grade.
It's your life, and you got to take control of it. And it's your mind, and you have to take ownership of it. There's definitely some great books that you can read on mindset. Chris and I will definitely rapid fire, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 books. Extreme Ownership The book you recommended last week, A Man's Search for Meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I would put Do Hard Things, which next week we're actually going to do.
Yep.
We're going to talk about that. I want to talk about it this week, but I needed an extra week to think about it. So we can do that. One other one. Okay, so we have 3.
Trying to think of a good finance book. Not. I don't want to do.
Oh, you know what? I got one.
Go for it.
Principles by Ray Dalio.
That's a good. Yeah. That's a deep one. That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, because I didn't want to do Rich. I didn't want to do Rich Dad.
No, neither do I. I'm done advertising that one.
Yeah.
But and those are just 4 books off the top of our head. We don't plan these podcasts out. If you can't tell, we have no idea what we're doing. So we just kind of hope. And that's just 4 podcasts. That's just 4 books. There are infinite number of books, infinite number of podcasts. You need to be careful though, based off of your individual tolerances, your individual mind, and the way that you perceive things, that you need to find people that are going to build you up. I would not find the influencer that's going to tear me down. There are some people that need that drill instructor. They need that Jocko. They need that David Goggins. I'm one of those people sometimes, but I'm also the person that needs to be nurtured sometimes. And you sound like the person that needs to be nurtured a lot. To be told that you're okay. You're going to be fine.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. There's nothing wrong. We all love that. We all need that. And you got a bright future ahead of you. Bright future.
Yeah. To our audience member who wrote in, thank you so much for doing so. I hope we made you laugh. I hope we made you maybe just realize that you're not in the situation you think you are. You're in a really good place, man. Like, I'm proud of you. I think you're enough. You've done it. You're going to do it. You have 20 more years. I don't know what age you want to retire, but let's just say it's 65. If you keep up your current trajectory, you have 20 years of compounding behind you. We can obviously talk about what is the investments in. I don't know any of that. Like, we didn't go into any of that. So we didn't go into the actual finance, because this isn't a finance problem. This is a mindset problem. This is a personal part of personal finance. We can, all that other stuff, the finance stuff, that's easy to deal with. That's just numbers. That's simple. But this stuff, the stuff between your ears, that is infinitely complex. We have zero idea what the hell's going on in our brains. We think we do, but we don't know. What is consciousness? I don't know. No one does. You got this, man. Big hugs from Arizona. Please write us in. I would definitely recommend therapy though. And like, just get in there immediately, take some of that extra money. And then once you're done with therapy, take that money that you're using for therapy and throw it at your 401k, throw it at your IRA. But don't look at therapy as like, I need to get it done right now to save more money for retirement. You figure it out with your therapist. You got this, bro.
Yeah. The main key point is you need mindset training, right? Mindset training and more knowledge from the right sources. So I hope you take a listen to the books that we recommended or read them, either or. But, you've got this. And best of luck.
Stick around.
With that being said, we're going to be moving on to Win of the Week. I'm going to go first because mine is a little bit less awesome. So my Win of the Week is that the new calendar that I purchased last week came in, and it has been working out swimmingly. And it's really caused me to think bigger. It's caused me to plan more, and really, I feel like oftentimes when you're in the foxhole, you're in the firefight, you can't see what's going on next month. All you can do is put out the fire right in front of you, because that's a real thing, right? And that's been my life in 2024. And I'm trying to stop that. I'm trying to dream bigger and do bigger. So my Win of the Week is that the massive calendar has been unbelievably successful, and I'm excited to talk more about it maybe next week. And the more as it goes on, see how I progress with it and how I use it. But so far, it's been going on pretty well. Chris, what's your Win of the Week?
My Win of the Week is actually just came today before recording. So I'm very excited that I got a win in the week, because I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I was actually able to update one of my credit cards, my Marriott Bonvoy card, what I use when I go to Marriott and just go in hotels. I actually was able to update that to the Ritz-Carlton card. Now, the Ritz-Carlton card, you cannot just come in and apply for. You have to actually already be a member and then be able to be invited or upgrade to it. So with that card, it gets you, with the current card I had, I was able to get a 35,000 point stay, which is equivalent to like 100, 150 bucks every year. Okay. So that card paid for itself as long as I stayed in one hotel for one night, because I paid $100 for the card, and then it gave me $140 to $180 value if I used it. This new card, the Ritz-Carlton card, gets you 85,000 points, which is equivalent to about $800 worth of
Nice.
a hotel stay. So now we can stay in much nicer hotels than we used to be able to. Obviously, the annual fee is a little bit higher,
Mhm.
but compared to the annual fee, compared to the value that I get from it, it's double. So annual fee is about $400. The value that I am expecting, because there's not just that one night, there's also a $300 airline credit. I'm
Nice.
expecting to be able to net out of this credit card $1,000 a year. So for $1,000 or for $400, I'm getting $1,000 of value every year, given that I keep up with it, given that I continue to do what I do.
Mhm.
And if I don't, it doesn't mean that I'm stuck with a $400 payment for the rest of my life. I just cancel the card. That is the beauty of credit card hacking. And like, that's the reason that so many people in my coaching program, they come for the mindset stuff. They come for all that,
Mhm.
but they stay for all the other things that we can talk about. We can talk about these credit cards, whatever you want. Like when I'm your coach, I'm your coach. We have things we have to deal with first and foremost. But after we get through that and you say like, hey, Chris, like I feel ready to go. I can go on my own. But before I do, like, I want you to teach me other stuff.
Mhm.
I'm yours. Like, let's do it, man. Whatever you want to learn, I've done it. Like I've legitimately done it. And I'm here to teach you so that you don't have to try to do it and make all the same mistakes I have, because I have made a lot.
Mhm.
I don't want you to have to go through it.
Well, that is definitely a big win. That card sounds unreal. Is there like is there like a spend threshold you have to hit before? No, not for this one because you're
No, you do have
upgrading.
to have, yeah, you do have to have a pretty high credit score,
Okay,
and you need to have a high credit utilization, a high like credit threshold.
okay, interesting. So
That's not bragging. That just is what it
no, 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 no. Obviously, no. You're good. High credit score. What would you consider that? Above 800?
is. To above 760, 780. It
Okay,
depends.
that's not too bad. It's not. I mean,
760, I would say.
okay. And then a high credit utilization, right? Is that how
Uh,
you
hi- high credit limit.
high credit
So not
limit? Gotcha.
utilization. Utilization would be how much you used of the limit.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
like say you have $10,000 to your name,
Yeah.
that's your credit worthiness, your credit limit.
Yeah.
But utilization would be I spent $1,000 on it. I utilized 10%.
Yeah.
So they want you to have a high credit limit. I'm not going to tell you what that is because I don't want to tell you my credit
No,
limits,
of course.
but
No, no, no. I wouldn't. I wouldn't
it's
ask you. But on like a different note, are you ready to share your social security number on this podcast? Or like,
Can I have your mother's maiden name
yeah,
while we're
what?
here?
Yeah, yeah. What's your address, real quick? Just want to know. For the people, for the people.
Yeah, for the people, for the people.
But yeah, guys, that'll be it for our podcast on today's episode. If you did enjoy it and you are listening on one of the many platforms we are on, make sure to give us a 5-star review and maybe leave a comment. We'd really appreciate that. And if you happen to be watching on YouTube, feel free to subscribe and share with a friend. Because let's be honest, going on this journey is so much better when going with a friend. We're the Five Guys, and we'll see you next Monday.
Later.
Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.